Let's take a quick walk today through our independent contractor agreement contract template. I'm Christine Scalera. I'm the founder here at thecontractshop.com, and I want to give you a preview because even though we give you a glimpse, a screenshot into what every contract looks like so you can get a better feel for it, I know sometimes it's scary to make a purchase when you don't know what you're getting. This way, you at least get to see a little bit more inside of our templates and get a better idea of what it is that you are purchasing. To get started with this particular agreement, we have the option for either ongoing services or on a certain date you will provide something. So for example, if your client has to do with a wedding, so if you're in the wedding industry of some sort and we for some reason don't have a niche template for you, I think we have most for the wedding industry, then you would go ahead and choose what date that event, that wedding is on. Because if you're working with a wedding date, that wedding date is pretty important. In fact, I'm not even sure there's a point for your contract if you miss that wedding date for some reason. Now, if you're providing something that's ongoing, for example, a template that I don't provide is for dog trainers. I don't have any plans to create a dog training contract template, but this independent contractor agreement would be a great fit for them because it's the catch-all of our contracts. And in that situation, it's not that you're giving the services on a certain date. You're probably giving them ongoing. And so that's when this line would just get deleted. Then we move into the parties. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I just misplace a phone number or an address, or technology ruins things for me. For example, when my iPhone just recently updated, it kept all of my text messages and numbers, but it deleted all of the names attached to those things. So I didn't know who I was talking to. I had to figure it out through context. And sometimes I had to refer to my own contract with my clients, which are set up in the same exact way. And it was great because I could just go in there, grab their phone number really, really quickly and give them a call without much stress of looking for that information. So that will be right here. Right where their client information, right where it's prompting you for that client information. And then up here is where you get to put in your information. You get to put in the name of your company if you have a company name. If you have a sole proprietorship or it's a registered LLC, either way, you can put the name of that company there. And if you don't know what the difference is, if that's just all gobbledygook, I recommend you go check out our blog at thecontractshop.com because that has a lot of great free resources about those things. It's pretty easy to figure out the difference and to set up, but you just have to do a little bit of reading and learning. There's also space for you to put in your phone number, and if you don't have a phone number for your company, it's just your cell phone or your family's phone, what I recommend is going to Google and getting a free phone number. Next, we go down and we see the purpose of the agreement. Now, unlike the mission statement maybe on your website or your elevator pitch that you tell people when they ask you, hey, what do you do? The purpose of the agreement is very, very, very simple, oversimple, if you will. It's just a place for you to, at the very base minimum, make sure that you are telling people what it is that you are giving them. So for example, what is the outcome of this agreement? That's where you would put that here. It doesn't have to be a long, long novel. It's just very, very simple and very straightforward. Next, we get to go down to the terms of the agreement, and this is where the contract really technically starts. We have an option for you to put in a package. If you don't have packages yet, this line just gets deleted. What's really important here is making sure that you're very specific about the types of things that you are providing. So one of the big mistakes that we see is someone is a wedding planner, for example, and we have a specific template for wedding planners, so I would actually suggest that instead. What they might do is they might say in the services here, day of coordination, wedding planning services on the next line. I can't highlight the next line. There we go. Day of coordination up here, and then wedding services would go here. Unfortunately, this really invites in something that we don't want, which is called scope creep. And you may have experienced this with people before where they hired you for a certain number of hours or a certain number of something, and they really try to stretch the limit. They try to push your boundary. by getting really specific about what it is that we are providing. So for example, I second shoot weddings sometimes just for fun. Sometimes in the contract, we will say, we are only offering you 4 hours of service. And then the couple will try to push the boundary by saying, because they can't afford maybe more hours of service. So they try to push it and say, oh, just stay for 1 more hour, 1 more hour. And one way to help with that is always to build that into your pricing. But if you're not there, making sure that you put the exact number of hours that you will be there on that wedding day as the wedding planner, wedding photographer, as the dog trainer, whatever it is, the service-based business that we are talking about here, making sure that you're really, really clear about the exact thing that you are providing down to the hours is helpful to avoid that scope creep. Because when someone says, well, I thought I was going to get this and that and the other thing too, it's very easy to go back to the contract and say, I really want to provide you with an excellent client experience. So if you can see in our services, all that I was hired to do is this. I've already provided XYZ above and beyond, because I'm sure you're doing a couple things that are above and beyond what you write here. And in order for us to continue working in this way, you just have to pay my hourly rate, you have to pay this enhanced fee, you have to pay this extra invoice, whatever it is. And that is how you get paid for your work, my friends. It's professional. It's something that you need to do to put food on the table, and it's something you need to do to continue to work with clients in this way, because if we allow scope creep to happen a lot, what happens is that we are not benefiting the other people we could be working with. So we're putting all our time and energy into a client who isn't valuing what we have to offer them because they're not willing to pay for it. They just want to kind of push us beyond our limits. And that's time and energy that we could have spent either marketing to the kind of client that wouldn't push our boundaries or working with clients that are respectful of our boundaries. And so it's great because if you are very clear in your services and what you provide, it's very apparent when you have or have not provided those things. And it's easy to say, okay, I have already provided you with what I said I'm going to, and now I need XYZ more money or an additional fee or you to pay this extra invoice in order to continue providing you services. See how that works? Cool. And then there's just some extra lines down here. So these are the essential lines up here. And then down here, this is for, in case they want something like an extra deliverable. So for example, if you're a wedding photographer, maybe what you're providing in your service is the actual photography and edits and some kind of proofs. But then in addition, maybe as needed, you will also offer extra photography sessions or extra proofs or extra time or consultations or extra prints. I want to skip down to this intellectual property section. It's a very important section for most of us that are giving a deliverable to a client. So if you are a dog trainer, this section probably does not apply to you. But if you are for some reason offering somebody some kind of copy or photo or design or anything that could be conveyed in a computer file, for example, or physically, so for example, a painting or some kind of artwork, then intellectual property becomes very important, and that's why it's included in this contract template. And we actually have two sections. You get to choose which one applies if you have some kind of intellectual property that you are dealing with. You can either choose to give that intellectual property to the client, or you can choose to keep it for yourself. So for example, if you are keeping the copyright, there are certain things that you do and you do not allow. You might not like or want the client to share that photo or sell that photo that you've created for them, or you might not want them to sell prints of an artwork piece that you've created for them. And again, most of these we already have as niche templates. We have all kinds of photography templates, and we also have a fine art custom painting template is what I'm trying to say. So make sure and see if we have a niche contract that fits what you're doing, but otherwise, if we don't, this independent contractor template is a great fit for you. So you get to decide what kind of things your client can either do if you decide to keep the copyright, if you decide to assign it to a client, if you want to charge them extra, or if you just want to give it to them as a gift, they get to keep that copyright. You no longer own it, but you might want to maintain some rights to it so that you can use it in your portfolio. So we have those provisions in there that talk about how that is going to happen and what that arrangement looks like in the future. Every contract also comes with a limit of liability, a style release, lots of different provisions that are fair for your clients, because we wouldn't want this contract to be invalid. We want it to be valid, and we want it to be a good, fair agreement, because ultimately this is to provide the client with a great experience. But they also are in there to protect you against the client who needs some money and is looking to cancel their services and blaming it on you, essentially, because that happens quite frequently if we allow it to. So those provisions are in there for your protection. I'm not going to go over there because I could talk about contracts for literally 12 hours straight. I love them. But what I will cover is also our cancellation policies. So of course we have a cancellation policy in case of, we call this force majeure. That's, I promise, as legalese as we get. We have a no legalese guarantee, but that is a word that we need to use here. So what that means is that if there's ever a war, a hurricane, anything that's outside of either of your control, we are not going to say that you still have to show up on that day to provide services. That would be insane. But the more important cancellation policies that are right above this force majeure provision in your template are what happens if the client decides to cancel or can no longer pay. And then the next one, which is what happens if you, for some reason, can no longer provide those services, which unfortunately has happened. People get in car accidents, they leave their profession, they get pregnant and have complications. So there's lots of different things that could happen to you or your family, unfortunately, that would prevent you from providing the best service possible, or any service possible in some instances. And so rather than just canceling the contract and leaving you out of money, which would be very devastating if you were in a, God forbid, car accident and needed to pay medical bills, what we have instead is language in there about what the replacement looks like in case something horrible like that happens, which I know none of us want to think about, but at least it's there for your protection if that ever did happen to you. So your family is still safe, your loved ones are still safe, and you're still earning money from the services. And then finally, the contract closes out with these common provisions. And these common provisions are what make this a contract. It's what makes it a legal agreement. And they really are there in case you ever needed to lean on this contract for some reason. So for example, if you needed to enforce this contract, you would want to know how to do that. And that's what these provisions down at the bottom do. I hope this preview was really helpful. I try to be as candid and transparent as possible, but unfortunately I can't just give you the template to see before you buy because, hello, that's how I make my living. So I'm trying to give you as much as I can to make this the best purchasing decision possible, because I truly believe in your client experience being the thing that transforms you from just a basic provider of services to, wow, that girl is killing it. She's an industry insider, an influencer, whatever you want to call it. I want to take you there, and I know this is the contract that can do that for you. So if you have any questions, contact me. hello@thecontractshop.com comes directly to me, Christina Scalera, and I will be happy to answer any kind of questions that you do have.